In today's video, we're going to be covering the Lotus Esprit. To start out, we have the S1 Esprit. It was released in June of 1976 as a successor to the Lotus Europa. The first generation Lotus Esprit was in the famous wedge shape. The car was designed by Giorgetto Gigaro from Ital Design. In Europe, the Lotus Esprit was powered by an inline-4 making 160 horsepower, but due to emission laws in the United States, the motor only made 140 horsepower. This was all being sent through a Citroën C35 5-speed manual transmission. The car weighed less than 1,000 kilograms and was on a steel backbone chassis. The S1 Esprit had a rear trailing arm suspension and front and rear disc brakes. Lotus claimed the Esprit could reach 0 to 60 in 6.8 seconds and reach speeds of up to 138 miles an hour. Despite Lotus's claims, road tests showed that the car could only go 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds and could only reach speeds of about 133 miles per hour. The S1 Esprit had suffered drivetrain issues, which makes it quite rare. We'll now move on to the S2 Esprit, or second generation Lotus Esprit. Fun fact, the S in S2, S1, S3, S4 standard for series. The S2 Esprit was released in 1978. Most changes were slight exterior changes, different wheels, slightly different interior, but not really all that much. Motor changes would come with the S2.2 Lotus Esprit. The S2.2 Lotus Esprit featured a 2.2-liter inline-4 rather than the normal 2-liter inline-4. There was a special edition of the S2 Lotus Esprit, that being the commemorative version. The commemorative edition of the Lotus Esprit featured the color scheme of the John and Player's Sons Lotus F1 car, which won the 1978 championship. An estimated 149 of these were built. The second rarest version of the S2 Esprit is the S2.2 Esprit. Only 88 of them were built since it only lasted a year. You're probably wondering what the rarest S2 Esprit is, and that would have to go to the Essex Esprit. The Essex Esprit wore special colors and an aerodynamic body kit. But not only this, it also featured a factory turbocharger. This got the dry sump 910 engine to be able to push 210 horsepower. This got the car to 60 miles per hour in 6.1 seconds, and all the way up to a speed of 150 miles per hour. There were only 45 Essex Turbo S2 Esprits, but there were a number of internally identical Esprits that were just lacking the livery. The S3 Esprit was launched in 1981 and featured the 912, 910, and 910S turbocharged inline-4 motors. To clear up any possible confusion, the 910S was the only turbo motor. The S3 Esprit is the last Gigaro-styled Esprit and is known for featuring the Turbo Esprit decals. This generation received an update in 1986 called the HC Esprits because of higher compression. In the American market, we received the first fuel-injected Esprits because of tighter emission policies. By the end of this generation of the Lotus Esprit, the power had gotten up to anywhere between 170 horsepower and 215 horsepower. The next generation of the Lotus Esprit is the X180 Esprit. Now you might notice that it is not called the S4 Esprit. Because of this, it is often referred to as its project code, the X180. The X180 Esprit looks very different than all of the last 3 generations, as it was designed by Peter Stevens, someone's name that I can finally pronounce. If you did not know already, this same person would go on to design the McLaren F1. Panels of the car were made through or vacuum-assisted rosin injection. This would make the car 22% more torsionally rigid. Despite how different this generation looked from the last 3, internally it was very similar. This Esprit featured the same C35 transmission as the last 3 generations, but it also included a Renault UN1 5-speed manual. The X180 only featured the 910 and the 910S turbo motors in everywhere except for Italy, which received a turbocharged version of the 920 motor. Power output of the 910S motor had not changed, but 0 to 60 times were all the way down to 5.1 seconds. The X180R is a road-going example of the Type 105 Lotus Esprit SCCA race car, and only 20 of these were ever produced. A modified version of the X180R was sold in Europe. It was called the Sport 300. These are known as the fastest 4-cylinder Lotus Esprits, as they could reach speeds of 161 miles per hour and go 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. Sales fell in 1991 and 1992 as new competitors like the NSX had arrived. We now have the S4 Esprit, which was actually the 5th generation of the Esprit. The S4 Esprit was put into production in 1993. The S4 Esprit featured the 920 turbo inline-4, both 910 motors, and a V8. Slight design changes were made, as well as rear taillights from the Toyota AE86, Toyota parts bin at works. The S4 4-cylinder models were bumped in performance with figures close to the X180R. The S4 V8 was released in 1996. It featured a 4-valve per cylinder, 90-degree, twin-turbo V8 called the 918. Sadly, the V8 was detuned from a potential of 500 horsepower to 350 horsepower due to the possibility that it could cause gearbox damage. This did not stop the Esprit from reaching 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds and reaching speeds of almost 180 miles per hour. The best version of the V8 Esprit was the Sport 350. It could go 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds and get to 100 miles per hour in under 10 seconds. It also had a glorious large carbon fiber wing which replaced the standard fiberglass wing. In 2002, the Esprit received a small styling change by future head designer Russell Carr, but no mechanical changes were made. After a whole 28 years of the Esprit being made, the final one rolled off the production line in 2004. The Esprit was one of the last cars to feature pop-up headlights, right along with the C5 Corvette. Lotus had tried to bring the Esprit back in 2010, but the project was sadly scrapped in 2014 due to financial issues. The Lotus Esprit is certainly one of my favorite cars of all time, and it's pretty sad to see that it most likely won't be returning anytime soon, at least. Anyways, that's the end of the video. My favorite version of the Lotus Esprit was the Sport 350 for the S4 Esprit. Comment down below what yours was. Thank you, and bye.